right? So there's a really remarkable kind of construct in which, and I get it, he's got a Substack, he needs to make money, he needs to grow his audience. And the way that conspiracy theories work, you have to create a villain, because, I just explained it to you, and it probably sounds very convoluted, very like, red string on a whiteboard kind of meme, right? It takes a long time to debunk point by point all of the crazy allegations in a conspiracy theory. For me, it's an order of magnitude more effort to refute the bullshit. Whereas for him, all he has to say is, she censored 22 million tweets. She's the head of the censorship industrial complex. And people who are not critical, haven't read my work, don't know who I am, don't know that I've advocated against takedowns for the better part of 5 years now, are like, oh yeah, censor, And so that's how the bespoke reality works, unfortunately. And that's
So this is a conversation between three sinister leftists, right? This woman's the leftist, the two hosts are leftists, right? And yet they're having a completely reasonable, thoughtful, nuanced conversation that is worth listening to.
That's how, we're not surprised by it. I'm not surprised.
And the right wing is in this story are the idiots, right? There are a lot of idiotic people on the right and on the left.
By it. It is a response. I think the question comes back to, what do you want? So do you want elections in which viral lies spread and proliferate, and election officials are threatened, and people don't trust the outcome of the elections because incentivized parties are lying?
So speaking of experts getting threatened, like now meteorologists getting threatened because people don't like various political legislation about climate change. So meteorologists being threatened by low IQ, right-wing perspective, drumming up, hatred for experts. Now it's the meteorologists.
And using their large follower accounts to manipulate their followers with claims that an election was stolen or ballots were destroyed or mules were doing God knows what. Is that the kind of information environment you want? Or is it reasonable for platforms to label some of these claims? Is it
right? I would ban people for doxing on social media. I would ban people for threatening harm, particularly physical harm, threatening violence, promoting criminal behavior, and promoting any behavior that's like clearly harmful, such as drinking bleach. I'm for banning all those people.
Reasonable for elected officials to counterspeak about these claims? I still maintain that the answer to that question is yes. And I still maintain that a label on counterspeech isn't censorship. And really that's, the most basic argument I can make about it.
That, like, she just presented, very commonsensical, reasonable, left-wing perspective. I thought she made some excellent points there. And I think right-wing critics not operating good faith and lacking in expertise.
There's an anecdotal experience that I think confirms the level that censorship has reached on this topic. For all the furore that surrounded Joe Rogan, and we ourselves covered in depth his episodes with Peter McCulloch and Robert Malone, and there was, like you say, it's a fire hose of information. So our episodes are like 3 hours long, and we barely cover 1/3 of what they said. That's obviously wrong in that. But the outcome of all those editorials, of all those articles, of all the hand-wringing, was that Spotify put up a little blue tab that says this contains
labels,
information.
yeah.
But we get it. Every single podcast that mentions COVID gets the exact same thing as Rogan. And and the episodes where the N-word was mentioned were taken down, so there was that as well. But just to say that, think of the mass amount of Substacks and discussions and podcasts over Rogan being destroyed. And what was the outcome? A banner on his podcast. He hasn't stopped talking about COVID, and he hasn't stopped promoting anti-vaccine stuff. But I did want to make you opine on Rogan. The thing that I did want to ask you about, Renee, is, so, what you just outlined, and this is me saying it, not you, that when I listened to the conversation between you, Barry, and Michael Schellenberger on Sam's podcast, I enjoyed the conversation because there's a difference of opinions and it was well conducted.
So the major problem, I think, with right-wing figures, online is that they lack expertise, right? They lack depth, and they don't have a particularly strong commitment to the truth.
And Sam had a good balance, but I couldn't help constantly getting that Barry and Michael were dilettantes who have not done basic.
Dilettantes, that's the word. Like Dennis Prager, Mark, Hugh Hewitt, Sean Hannity, even Tucker Carlson. Much of the time, these guys are just purely dilettantes, disparaging the work of people with genuine expertise.
Research on how moderation functions, or even just the kind of policies that were in place, or what agencies are. And that's been my constant impression with the Twitter files, is people have, very interesting access. You could present interesting material just from the moderation discussions that have to go on, or, whatever your position on the actions that they end up taking. But instead, it became this, hyperbolic, politicized things where everything was presented in the most sensationalized way. And I want to just...
That is a pretty fair characterization of much of right-wing public punditry, public discourse. Right, back to Dennis Prager, decoding Dennis Prager, putting Dennis Prager through the... All right, trait 5 of the guru: self-aggrandizement and narcissism. It's impossible to be a guru without having a sense of grandiosity and an inflated idea of one's self-importance. The role of being a guru means cultivating praise and attention, demands a certain level of charisma and charm. Dennis Prager, loves to have people write in and tell how he's affected their life. That's what he asked for on his birthday every year. Another trait of narcissists is a belief in one's uniqueness and that only special people can appreciate them, right? I've only got 9 viewers right now, but you are so special. I mean, you're a genuine truth seeker, right? You're not a, right? You're special. So gurus tend to have a thin skin when it comes to criticism. They expect that the world should be much more recognizing of their talents. Narcissism is the key personality trait of gurus. People without overconfidence and attention seeking will find the role of guru uncomfortable and they will flee from it, even if it is thrust upon them. So a normal person will flee from the role of, right? Usually only damaged people will embrace being a guru. People who are not narcissistic, people with genuine expertise, people with genuine insight in a given domain will tend to find the guru spotlight an unwelcome distraction. Right? People on the spectrum of narcissism will find any attention, any regard highly satisfying. This will be their motivating factor for engaging in going way beyond whatever talents they might have to engage in the pseudo-profound nonsense tech described here. So this lack of self-awareness common among narcissists also seems to explain why gurus such as Dennis Prager seem to believe their own baloney. Just as narcissists love themselves, they're in love with their own ideas, they tend to be incapable of seeing the degree to which they are fraudulent. So I gave Prager a 3 out of 5. So here are some examples of Dennis Prager's self-aggrandizement. He explains why he wrote the Rational Bible Commentary. Somebody has to explain these biblical texts or they will go further into oblivion. So I'm a tad skeptical that Dennis, who autographs Bibles, has the ability to save the Bible. Julie tells him, it's revolutionized my life. Okay, I wonder if we can...
Well, I talk about this.
I wonder if I can find... Oh, can't find the timestamp for this, but she says, revolutionized. If all I did was affect you, it was worth writing, says Dennis. Right? He's used that line at thousands of people. Julie, when I was done reading your Bible commentary, Dennis, I went from seeing the world in a secular way to seeing the world in a religious way. When I walk down the street and I look around me, I feel more connected to life. I mean, you probably have the same experience from viewing. You just appreciate every day, Dennis stated. I believe that I had brought more people to belief in God, to taking the Bible seriously, to Jews embracing Judaism, and to others embracing Christianity than any other living Jew or Christian. Well, here's my concern. Given the poor epistemic quality of Prager's reasoning, I wonder about the qualities of these religious conversions, right? Epistemic means how do we know what we know? So it kind of reminds me of all the Christian evangelists buzzing around my father. And when they all get together, they'd all boast about the hundreds of people they'd baptized. And this led these people to just see everybody as fodder for Christ. Dennis declared on his radio show, I've never been hurt by... I have a built-in antennae for who to trust. I have perfect pitch, right? Never been hurt by a friend, right? Anyone who says they've never been hurt by a friend is clearly wrong. So if Prager believes what he's saying, he is clearly... Dennis says, I've never had a female friend, right? Friendship with the opposite sex, guys, that's just for mere mortals. For a self-described highly sex man like Dennis Prager, it's just not on. Dennis says, I've never been envious of